chance at top-tier tickets from John Mulaney to Santana to the Doobie Brothers, My Chemical Romance, and more. Don't wait. Enter now. KFAN.com. Keyword contest. KFAN.com. Keyword contests.
Minnesota Wild proudly select from the University of Wisconsin, Charlie Stramel.
Scores! Michigan State, Charlie Stramel. What a way to notch a hat trick outdoors.
Stramel, 2-on-1, scores! Charlie Stramel.
That shot score. You can start stenciling the name on the MVP trophy. Charlie Stramel with another one.
Charlie Stramel, the 21st overall pick by the Wild in 2023. This week signed his 3-year entry-level contract. That'll start real soon here, and we hope it's sooner rather than later. Charlie Stramel joins us on the line now on KFAN. Charlie, Kevin Fallness here in Minnesota. Thanks for taking some time. Congratulations. Now that it's official, you're a pro, bud.
Yeah, thank you. No, it's an exciting time. Felt unreal to sign that contract, and looking forward to moving up to play pro hockey next year.
We'll talk about the future and the now in a second. Let's go back a couple of weeks ago. The Frozen Four going on. It starts tonight in Las Vegas, takes us through the weekend. A couple of weeks ago, you were playing for Michigan State in the regional final against Wisconsin. Unfortunately, you block a shot with your ankle. Did you know right away you were in trouble? I mean, if I take a puck to the ankle, I know right away I'm in trouble. It sounds like you actually tried to play on it at one point.
Yeah, kind of just went to block a shot. I don't know, hurt pretty bad. Got to the bench and then took another shift, and right away I kind of just knew in that next shift that, something was pretty wrong, and I ended up going and getting checked out, and they said it was broke. So unfortunate, but at the end of the day, it's part of the game, and all you can do is move forward, and yeah.
That was an early part of the hockey game, so you're forced to sit there and watch the rest of the events unfold. I know that it's an obvious question, but how helpless of a feeling is that? All you want to do more than anything is be out there, be a part of the team, help your teammates, and you're stuck, in a boot probably.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, especially early in the game, and going up there and not being able to help the guys. Like you said, it's a very helpless feeling, but at the end of the day, that's the risk you take playing this game is, to get injuries here and there. So, I'm proud of the way the boys fought, throughout the season and even in that last game, but, anything can happen. It's a do or die hockey game. So unfortunate loss, but, I'm sure the boys will be back next season.
What's the timeline for you as you try to make your way back to the ice and continue your progress towards stepping on a professional sheet of ice?
Yeah, so right now, kind of just focused on rehab. Should have about just around 6.5 weeks until I should be 100% back on the ice. So during this time, just rehabbing, regaining strength and mobility, and finishing up the degree here at Michigan State.
Awesome stuff. I'm excited to hear more about that. Have you ever dealt with an injury like this of any kind where you've had to deal with the rehab process?
Yeah, I've had some injuries early on in my career. I had surgery on my hip 4 or 5 years ago. So I've been through rehab processes on different things. So I think it's kind of just about, staying with it, making sure you're getting the stuff done and recovering.
It's a double whammy because not only your season ends and your career ends on the college level, but there was a real chance you could have made your NHL debut here in the final few games of the Wild regular season. Hard to say, I'm sure, but it just wasn't meant to be at this time. Your time will come, you know that. But how disappointing is it that you were this close and now you have to wait a little longer?
Yeah, pretty disappointing. Like you said earlier, not great timing, in the front of not being able to help the team, keep the season going, and then obviously not being able to make a pro debut. But, there's not much you can do about it. What's happened has happened, and now it's just focusing on moving forward.
Moving forward, indeed. It was a couple of good years there at Michigan State. Of course, we're following the Gophers here in the Big Ten, and we see your name flash up all the time with Sparty. What did those 2 years in East Lansing mean to you?
Yeah, it was unbelievable. This staff, this school, my teammates really helped me, find my game again. I was kind of at a low point at Wisconsin, hockey-wise, and for Coach Nightingale to take me in and, really helped me, become a better hockey player and find my game again, also just become a better person. I've learned so much over these 2 years, at this university, and I can't thank the staff, the teammates, and, the university enough for how much they've helped me.
Am I being dramatic if I say your time with Michigan State and at East Lansing saved your career? Am I going over the top there?
I don't know. That's kind of a. I mean, I don't hate that take. It's an interesting way to put it, but yeah, I wasn't playing great hockey. I really struggled at Wisconsin. Finding my game, being able to produce or help the team, and I needed to switch up at the end of the day. And like I said, Coach Nightingale, the staff here, really helped me find my game again, and figure out how to play to my strengths, and figure out how to, help my team win at the college level, and I'm so thankful for that.
Talking to Wild prospect Charlie Stramel, 21st overall pick by the Wild in 2023. Earlier this week, signed that 3-year entry-level contract. Well, you mentioned Nightingale a couple of times, and for fans that don't know, what's your history with him? Not only there in East Lansing, but you had a history with him before landing with Michigan State. What was it?
Yeah, so when I ended up going to the National Development Program, at 15, 16 years old there, he was the head coach, and, I loved him there. He's one of my favorite coaches ever, and he taught me a lot over those young years in my career. And when it was time to kind of enter the portal and, rethink the college route, it was a no-brainer for me. He reached out, and it was, if I'm going to leave this school, I got to go to someone I can trust and someone I know that, does the job right. And like I said, he's been a phenomenal help, and, wouldn't be here without him.
Yeah, it'd be good to see him leading the way for Team USA and the World Juniors. As for you, take me back to 2023. I played the clip of Bill Guerin announcing your name. I think it was there in Nashville, 21st overall by the Wild. What was that moment like for you as a Minnesota kid, grew up in Rosemont? What does it mean to be drafted by the hometown team?
Yeah, just a surreal feeling, growing up a Wild fan my whole life, and then to hear your name, called in the draft by them, it was just amazing, and it was so blessed to be picked by them, and now hopefully having the opportunity to throw the jersey on and play in the organization. It's just a surreal feeling, and something I'm really looking forward to this next season.
As a young lad, and you're still a young lad, but as an even younger lad, would you make your way down to then XL Energy Center, take in the games? How big of a Wild rube were you at the time?
Yeah, no, I was a big fan for sure. Saw plenty of games at the XL, whether that's regular season, some playoffs. Kind of just grew up a fan my whole life, and, still am today. So to hopefully be able to be a part of the organization, it's exciting.
I love the history of the Minnesota Wild and some of the names that you can throw out there. So again, we're not talking about the year 2000, but when you grew up, who were some of those names that you were following?
Yeah, I was a huge Zach Parise fan growing up. I feel like that's right when I started kind of paying attention to it. Mikko Koivu, big centerman, love watching his game and trying to take things from him. Granlund when he was here. Those are kind of the names that pop into my head that I remember kind of watching on a night-to-night basis.
I love it. Folks that follow college hockey much closer than me compare you to Jules Eriksson Ek. I've heard that comparison thrown around. That's a lofty comparison. One of the best 200-foot players in the league, a pain in the neck. He's tough to play against, but that's a lot of the things that I'm hearing about Charlie Stramel. Do you say your game is comparable to a Jules Eriksson Ek?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely something I'm striving to be. He's a heck of a hockey player, and definitely something when I turn on the Wild games that I can learn a thing or two from, for sure. He's, like you said, he's one of the best 200-foot centers in the league, and, brings it every night, brings that mean toughness 200-foot game, and that's something I try and pride myself in. Yeah.
All right, just a couple more for you. I know you had an opportunity to talk to John Hines at some point during the season. What was that conversation like, and what do you think about the future of playing for him, playing for Bill Guerin, and putting on this Wild uniform?
Yeah, no, he was great. I had a conversation with him, and he was kind of just up front, like, keep playing your game, stick to your strengths and what makes you great at the college level. And then whenever the time is, whenever it's time to turn pro and hopefully throw the sweater on, be ready to go, because, it's not easy. Sometimes you're going to get thrown into the fire, and just be ready to go.
Who's your pick for the Frozen Four? Is the wound too fresh to tell me who you think has the best opportunity to lift the hardware this year, or who do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I can have a take on that. I'll tune in, but I can't say I'm really rooting for anyone, to be honest.
I get it. Charlie, thanks for doing this, man. Hey, good luck in rehabbing the ankle. We look forward to seeing you on the ice here very soon, and I can't wait to see you in that Wild uniform sometime in the very near future.
Yeah, thank you, guys. I appreciate you having me on.
There you go. Charlie Stramel, again, first-round pick back in 2023. You think about the trajectory for that young man there, Brett, over the last couple of years. I can't hang up on him. I think my computer's frozen again. You think about the trajectory for that young man over the last couple of years coming out of Wisconsin. He was buried. And like I say, I don't think it's too dramatic to say that his time in East Lansing did resurrect his career, because a lot of people were saying first round bust, all this stuff, even though he's very young at the time. He goes to East Lansing and he develops into one of the premier players in college hockey. You've heard Pat talk about him on Beyond the Pond and his respect level for
and that means everything.
Well, it means something, because he's following the game a lot closer than I am, and his respect level for Charlie Stramel is rather high. So it feels like what Adam Nightingale and Michigan State did for him put him back on the map. And I think a lot of people are very excited to see him in a Wild uniform, which could be next year. I don't know how training camp's going to go. I don't know what he's going to do over the summer, but he's got the opportunity to really make a splash here. And, we talk all the time about the need for help at center ice. He's one of them.
Yeah, 100%. I'd leave it to you to look ahead to next season, and look ahead to the future.
That's my specialty.
Exactly. No, I think people were throwing around the B word a little too early on him. And was
for good reason out of Wisconsin, right?
Yeah.
Because of the change. And to no fault of his own, Mike Hastings didn't recruit him. He wasn't a Mike Hastings guy, and he ended up getting buried. And the transfer portal played directly. This is why it's there. Now, it's abused through many different ways in many different sports. But this is the one example I can think of off the top of my head where the transfer portal was used the absolute right way. He was getting buried after a coaching change, and he got an opportunity to find new life in Michigan State, and it worked for him.
Yeah.
Perfect example of why the transfer portal exists, even though it's getting abused by many folks on many different levels. Why don't we squeeze in a break? Maybe we can do some Brett Blakemore's breakaways. You want to do that?
I love it. I've got a lot of good stuff prepared for you that you're going to love.
I love to hear that. We got Kevin Gorg coming up at the bottom of the hour, but buckle up. Up next, Brett Blakemore's breakaways.
Fan.
A little show you may have heard about every Saturday morning from 10 to noon during the hockey season is a show by the name of Beyond the Pond. Every Saturday, 10 to noon, usually myself, Pat Micheletti, and Brett Blakemore are behind the wheel, and it'll be no different this Saturday. One thing we love about Beyond the Pond, especially because of the tension it creates between Brett Blakemore and Pat Micheletti, is Brett Blakemore's breakaways.
It's time for Brett Blakemore's breakaway.
Here's a break. Kaprizov in alone. Nobody can catch him. Kaprizov score!
I could say the sky is blue, and that would fight me.
I was going to say, I didn't want to step over the sting. I'll play the role of Pat then today. So anything you say, I'm going to say, nah, I don't think I can agree with that, and I'll call you dumb, and I'll make you feel bad about yourself without calling you dumb. How about that?
Yeah.
So I'll play the role of Pat. So whatever you say, go ahead, try it once. Say, hey, the sky is blue.
Weekend. Man, I just think the sky is so gorgeous. There's not a cloud.
I don't know. There's certainly a lot of clouds out there. I'd call it more partly cloudy than partly sunny. Blue sky is more like gray clouds.
Would you rather take 6 clouds or 3? Anyways.
All right, so I can do this. Let's see how it goes.
You asked me earlier in the show, would you show your cards in Dallas? Would you make this a playoff preview, set the tone? So I'll turn it around to you. Would you, if the head coach is Kevin Fallness, is this we're setting the tone tonight and we're coming at you and showing we mean business this time around?
I think so. I think it's all hands on deck. If you're healthy and this is your varsity lineup going into the playoffs, throw them out there and see how things stack up. Why not? You know what? And if you have the opportunity to screw around with the lines a little bit, if you want to see Bobby Brink instead of Nick Foligno, so be it. But you got your top 6. You know what your top 2 defensive pairs are, and Philip Gustafson will get the start between the pipes. I think it's basically varsity on varsity, assuming I don't know who's healthy there for the Dallas Stars. I can't imagine Rope Hintz is back yet, but regardless, I think it's both their top lineups, whoever's healthy.
I have a couple of lineup questions. We mentioned with Russo, but I wanted to get your talk on the goalie situation. Speaking of ripping Pat, on Sunday I counted them, 10 unanswered texts just leading the parade for Jesper Wallstedt.
Yep. I know, from Mr. Micheletti. Yeah.
Yes. Now, what's kind of funny about that is the 2 goals that Wallstedt gave up weren't great. One of them was a turnover in the own zone, which is tough to come back from, but they were both 5-hole, I thought, savable shots. But then, once he locked in, that thing was over. Wallstedt, when he gets in a roll, he's very good. Now, I stand by. I think Wallstedt may potentially even have a higher ceiling, but I think a higher floor, without a doubt, is Gus Bus. I think that he's going to give you a more consistent, where with Wallstedt, when he's good, he's really good, and when he's off, he's off. So I'm still leaning towards Gus Bus, but what do you make of that opinion?
I'm not even leaning towards him. Philip Gustafsson is going to be your number one guy going into the playoffs, and he'll be your number one guy until he isn't. He's going to be the guy that decides if he's going to be the number one guy or not. Again, like I said with Russo, this is his opportunity to put a stamp on his legacy. And now there's still a lot to come in his National Hockey League career, but I'm talking for the right here, right now. He's got the opportunity to make himself put a stamp on what he wants to be known for. Yep. As the guy that leaves games early, as the guy that shrinks when the lights are the brightest, or a guy that stands up to the pressure. That's what a number one goaltender in the National Hockey League does, especially this time of year. Put up or shut up. That's what I say, and Philip Gustafsson is your guy again until he's not.
The other lineup conundrum is the 3 forwards, Nick Foligno, Bobby Brink, Danila Yurov. I thought, again, Brink created scoring chances. I thought Yurov was good in his own zone for the most part. That one costly turnover was not great. But he's winning 50-50 battles. They all have energy. I love the way that Bobby Brink just skates with effort, regardless of where he is on the ice. Just a feisty guy. And then, of course, the veteran Nick Foligno, who is responsible and smart and can make things happen as well.
And can kill penalties and can win face-offs.
Yep, and 100%. So there really isn't a situation where I'm going to be fired up and I can't believe they didn't put this guy. Would I like to see Brink in there for a little more offensive flair? Yes. But I can at least understand what they're trying to do. But those 3, one of those is going to be the odd man out, at least game 1, maybe not game 2. But if you game 1 tonight, where would you be leaning in this lineup decision?
What I love about having Nick Foligno and Danila Yurov on the same line is that Nick Foligno can come in and take faceoffs. If there's one thing that is lacking in Yurov's game right now, it's to win the big faceoff. And to have a guy like that at your disposal that can come in and win a draw, I think that's something to look at. But I see what you're saying with Bobby Brink. If they need speed, if they need a guy that can jump up and down the lineup, that's why I like a Bobby Brink. I still think you might start with Bobby Brink, but once the tension starts to rise within the course of this series, I think Nick Foligno is probably going to be the guy more often than not. Just my opinion.
I got 2 more for you. One is kind of a statement. I think the game ops this year has been really good. The opening video.
Be very happy to hear that.
Yeah, well, I think the opening video, the Beware the Wild, where the team bus gets frozen over,
love it, is
the best opening intro I've ever seen at a Minnesota Wild game. It is the best.
Yep.
There's a couple other montage that they do that are really good. So I wanted to get that out of the way. But when's the last?
Tell me more about the goal song, Brett. Is that where you're going?
No, I've already done that. I've done my bit.
I don't want to stand up and shout.
No, I wanted. Oh, that's what I want back. But no, that's not where I'm going. When's the last time we heard? You only hear it when they win, when everyone else is already out of the building, when Kevin Gorg is done talking about K-Train down on the ice.
K-Train with the Gus Bus.
With Matt Boldy. We got to get pucks in deep. That's when you hear the State of Hockey anthem. You don't hear it in the first intermission anymore. You don't hear it leading up into the game when everyone's in there and you get chills at Grand Casino Arena. Why don't we bring back a true State of Hockey anthem moment when everyone's actually in the building, not only when they win and only when everyone's out of the building? Give me some State of Hockey.
Please, don't talk over the State of Hockey anthem. Louder, please.
You should stand up.
I am. Why aren't you? Hats off. I was going through the archives yesterday when I was coming up with that opening segment, and
yes.
I talked to the powers that be at the Wild that we don't own the rights to them anymore. But I think it was about
to the anthem?
10 years ago, we had about 5 or 6 different versions of the anthem that local bands like Soul Asylum, was that one of them? Chris Hockey Band. There was like Grandpa's Cousin or whatever that band was. There were like 3 or 4 different bands that did different versions of the anthems. I was going to bust those out tonight. We don't own those the rights to those anymore.
There is
so they live on my archive.
When the Wild lose, there's
I've
that
got
like
that
guitar one.
I've got many different. These were ones where they did the actual anthem with different types of speed. The lyrics were awesome. I mean, it was just the anthem by different local bands. It was really well done, very cool. But I can't play those on the radio. But there are different acoustic versions. There's instrumental. There's one, I think, with a banjo. I could bust those out sometime. But
this is the most rude thing I've ever said on these airwaves.
Okay.
When I'm sitting at Grand Casino Arena and they play the State of Hockey anthem, that version of it, chills every time, without fail. I love it. Anyways, we'll move on. Last thing for you, and then we'll get to Kevin Gorg and probably talk to
K-Train with the Gus Bus.
The wild card spots in the NHL, they're up for grabs. In
it's
the East,
nuts.
Yeah, you've got a 2-point lead for Ottawa for the last spot, but then Columbus not far behind, Detroit a little bit further behind. That was a huge logjam just a couple days ago. And then Nashville getting into the picture on the west side. Hopping over LA, they're at 84 to LA's 83, and somehow the Sharks are hanging around as well, who we haven't thought. Remember years ago when going to the Shark Tank was like a big scary thing? And it may well be with Celebrini.
It will be soon.
Yeah, but who do you think gets the last spots in both the East and the West?
In the Eastern Conference, I thought for sure it was going to come down to Ottawa and Detroit, and even Columbus. You know, they went on that incredible run. They fired Dean Evison, and they just go on this miraculous run. Now it's a logjam because Detroit's come back to the pack. Ottawa's separating themselves a little bit. They've won 2 in a row. But the Islanders, that's another team that very well could be in the mix of things if they could pull their head out of their backside.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. And new coach. Firing a guy with 4 games left to go in the regular season. Holy smokes. And they're looking for that coach bump. Just like I think Tortorella, I saw, is 4-0 now since they made the coaching change there in Vegas. Since they gassed Bruce Cassidy with 8 games left to go in the regular season. It's a real thing. And now it's, to me, who do I pick to take the wild card in the Eastern Conference to get that last and final spot there of the 8 squads? I don't know. I guess I'll go with Ottawa at this point. It's still the feel-good story is going to be the Columbus Blue Jackets. Zach Werenski, by the way, we don't give him enough credit here. We don't see enough of him, but man, is he a force. And then as far as the Western Conference goes, hard to go against the Nashville Predators, but it's really difficult to bet against Macklin Celebrini and the San Jose Sharks. They got worked last night by the Los Angeles Kings. Watched a little bit of that hockey game. But Macklin Celebrini, an MVP candidate in what he's doing as a teenager with, I think I saw 107 points now through last night. Incredible. So I'd like to say the San Jose Sharks, but I love rooting for Andrew Brunette, Darby Hendrickson, and the Nashville Predators. How about you? Who do you got in the West? I don't care about the East.
I think Nashville's kind of the hotter team, but LA does have a game in hand. So I think it could be a toss-up, but I would probably still stick with Nashville closing it out.
So 5 teams from the Central Division advance to the postseason, and that's the way it should be. The Pacific's been garbage most of the year. Edmonton catching heat here at the right time. Well, Vegas, too, after the coaching change, having won 4 straight. So interesting times indeed. We'll get to that and more. Great job with Brett Blakemore's Breakaways. As always, a staple of Beyond the Pond, 10 to noon every Saturday, including in just 2 short days. We'll take a break, and then when we continue, well, of course, we'll keep the hockey talk going, but Kevin Gorg loves talking about anything in the world of sports, so we'll get to all that, his take on the goal song, and what he thinks the 2030 lineup will look like for the Minnesota Wild. All that and more when we continue with the K-Train.
Never miss your chance to know what the latest sports news is in town, chances to win tickets, or just knowing what's going on with all of your favorite KFAN shows. You can follow KFAN 1003 on all of our social channels like Instagram, TikTok, and X. You can stay connected and follow the sports leader, The Fan.
Wild fans, it's time now. So everybody join me. Let's play hockey!
6 seconds remaining. This crowd celebrating. Puck back out to center ice. And the Dallas Stars are about to get shut out. The Wild win it 6-0. The Stars return to Minnesota. They run into a buzzsaw as the Wild skate them out of the building by a final count of 6-0. And Manny Fernandez picks up the shutout.
Yeah, you want to talk about goosebumps. The first ever meeting between the Wild and Stars, December 17th, 2000, at the time, XL Energy Center. What a night that was. Kevin Gorg, FanDuel Sports Network, joins me now. I remember that game like it was yesterday there, Mr. K-Train, starting with Neil Broughton, doing the Let's Play Hockey. I know you weren't with the Wild at that time. You started covering the team for whatever it was at that point, Fox Sports or whatever back in the year 2005, whenever you began. But I guarantee you were on the edge of your seat watching that game in 2000.
Yeah, I think for all of us, Kev, that grew up fans of the Minnesota North Stars, that was a special night, right? Like that was when the torch was officially patched. You know, when you got to really kind of, okay, we're moving on, putting the old to bed, we're moving on with the new. It still hurts, even driving through Bloomington, where the Met Center used to be. It was a big, big part of my childhood for a lot of people. You know, it was a very special team. The North Stars were sacred ground. So, you know, it was fun to be a fan that night, watch the Wild kind of, you know, fist pound that hockey team. And, you know, it still brings you back to that rivalry now because, you know, you look at the Dallas Stars and who they've become. They won that Stanley Cup in the late 90s. That could have been our cup. Neil Broughton, the guy that did Let's Play Hockey on the clip you just played, was on that team. So, you know, it's time to beat them when it counts.
No doubt. You know what comes to my mind, and I do remember going to the Met Center. I remember watching the North Stars. I remember all that good stuff. But every time I drive down 494 towards the Mall of America, what I think about is that totem pole. I can't remember the name of that bar, that hotel that was right there. But, right, I think about that every time I drive down that stretch.
The Thunderbird. And I think a lot of the visiting teams stayed there. And the Met Center had the best tailgating you've ever seen because, again, it was connected to the Met Stadium. And so you had that giant parking lot. And I remember vividly going to North Stars playoff games with my buddy, bringing the grills, sitting out there. We actually bring little miniature nets and play some stick hockey. You know, like I said, like it's nostalgia to think about it. But now this time of year, like when you get to this point of the season, you've got the college hockey winding down with the Frozen Four. You've got all these races to see which teams are going to get in the playoffs. And for us, we've known about this matchup for the better part of the last 6 to 8 weeks. And now one more time in the regular season, and we can put it to bed and start focusing on next week. I'm a little bit torn. I'm on Lou Nanny's side of the equation. I don't think home ice matters all that much. My biggest concern in the last week of the season is, can we get this team to the playoffs healthy? The last 5 years, there have been key guys that were not healthy. I just want this team to have their big gunners healthy.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I don't think home ice is all that important. But what about tonight? You go into this game, you already know the matchup is sealed up, but do you put all your cards on the table? Are you throwing everything against the wall? Do you expect playoff intensity tonight at American Airlines Center between the Wild and Stars?
100%. I think it's going to be a physical game. I think there's going to be some conversations. I think there's going to be some tones that need to be set that will lead into game one a week from Saturday. I don't think it's life or death. I don't think either team would say if they don't win tonight, they have a different set of confidence going into the playoffs. I will be really intrigued by the coaching matchup because I look at John Hines as a coach that can really do different things with the way he strategizes in these matchups. So I'll be curious to see if maybe he shows Dallas something a little bit different tonight, knowing he's got something in his holster for next week. I think this is going to be an incredibly even series. So I think that special teams, goaltending, and coaching all gets magnified. And I think John Hines, from what we've seen in his time in Minnesota, is a huge asset for this hockey team. And we saw him on that bench with Team USA. We saw what he brought to the penalty kill. And that's going to be the matchup where, Bill Guerin gave him some tools now to work with on the PK. I look at what McCarron brings. I look at what Nick Foligno brings. These are huge difference makers on a penalty kill because when Minnesota has been beaten by Dallas in the playoffs and in the regular season, their power play has dominated the Wild's penalty kill. To me, that's the matchup that has to go the way of Minnesota.
Talking to Kevin Gorg here of FanDuel Sports Network. You guys are idle tonight because it's a national broadcast. I know I give you guys a lot of crap and the hashtag MuteTV, all in good fun and all that stuff. But I know this, for you in particular, it kills you to have to be on the sideline and you're not out there in Dallas. But at the same time, Gorgie, you get a chance to take it in as a fan. There's got to be something kind of beneficial to that, no?
Oh, no, I love watching it, without having to worry about planning out interviews and thinking about, what hit I want to bring into the broadcaster in each period. There's some of that, but it's hard to lose big games. And, not being in Dallas tonight, there's some FOMO for me for sure. My bigger worry would be when the playoffs start because it's such a good series on paper, Kev. It's a series that I think hockey fans all around North America want to dive into. I'm really much more worried about losing a playoff game. To me, we only get one round in the playoffs, and I look forward to playoff hockey more than anything else. When the regular season starts, all I think about is, do I get to work a great playoff series? And now it's here, and I don't want to lose any of those likely 7 games. So I'll take a loss tonight, and I'll watch it on my Barca Lounger, knowing that hopefully I get 6 or 7 games of that incredible series.
Are you and the FanDuel guys on board for the final 3 games of the regular season after tonight?
We are, and super interesting because, obviously if Minnesota wins in regulation tonight, it's on. But I'll be even more curious to see what happens if Dallas wins this game tonight either way, because I do believe there is some benefit on these final 3 games, especially knowing what you're going to walk into in Nashville.
Yeah.
I mean, they're a wagon right now. They're physical. That building is insanely loud. If Dallas wins the game tonight, I'd be very surprised if the Wild didn't start to maybe give some guys a night off here or there. You look at what Boldy, Faber, and Quinn Hughes have been through with 0 break and taking it all the way to the gold medal game, and the minutes they play, the big minutes they play, and the physical abuse they certainly take. If there's a silver lining, I want the Wild to go out and beat the Stars tonight as much as anybody, but if it doesn't happen, that silver lining is maybe some of our key guys can get a little rest, and that might give us a little bit of an edge because Dallas certainly could have rushed some of their guys back here down the stretch, and they haven't. And, that's the risk-reward thing we're looking at tonight and then into the final 3.
You wear so many different hats, and I do want to get back to the Wild and this matchup tonight and preview the playoffs and all that other good stuff, but you love watching golf, you love watching the ponies. If I said to you, Kevin Gorg, I've got the power to decide, you can only watch one of these for the rest of your life and you get no knowledge of the other one. You have to pick one. Do you pick the Masters or do you pick the Kentucky Derby? You only get one of them for the rest of your life. What do you pick?
Well, it's like picking between my kids. I mean, these are 2 of my favorite things in the entire world. Anybody that knows me understands that, but I will gladly take 4 days of Masters golf compared to 2 or 2.5 minutes of an incredible race. And I love the lead up to the Derby almost as much as I like the race itself, all the prep races, the months leading into it. But no, the Masters to me, lucky enough to have attended this event once. It takes me back to when I was a kid. My dad was a local golf pro, and when I was, 5, 6, 7 years old, watching this golf tournament with my dad, 86, when Jack Nicklaus made that incredible run at age 46, watching that with my pops, This weekend's always very special. He's currently in a home, and he's got some health issues, but I was there this morning, and because technology now, Kev, with the Masters app, we got to watch the old guys tee it off. So there's Jack Nicklaus, there's Gary Player, there's Tom Watson. Watching that with my dad this morning at 6:30, watching him eat those McDonald's pancakes, it brought a chill to me for sure.
Awesome stuff, Gorgie. I didn't listen to you on the power trip, but I know you guys do that annual thing where you pick your golfers, especially for the majors. Who did you get? How happy are you with your selection? And who is your actual pick for the Masters?
Well, my actual pick is Xander Schauffele. I think he's playing incredible golf coming in. He's won a couple of majors. He's contended at Augusta, but hasn't been able to get over the hump on Sunday. I actually think he wins it this weekend. I had picked 6, and I fell into Rory McIlroy, and I was thrilled. Now, it's very hard to repeat. Only 3 players have done it: Nicklaus, Tiger Woods, and Nick Faldo. So it's not something that happens very often. But I would put Rory McIlroy in a category with Nick Faldo. He's not where Nicklaus is, certainly not where Tiger Woods is, but he's good enough, and he's in a good mind space right now. You know, he's really, I think, matured, and that win last year has put him in a place where that pressure is gone, and he's always loved this golf course. So I don't mind it, but if push comes to shove and I need to pick one guy this weekend, I really like the way Xander Schauffele's playing. What I just want, though, Kevin, I've got an off day in St. Louis, is I want a typical Masters Sunday with Jim Nantz, Butler Cabin, 5 or 6 studs at the top of that leaderboard, duking it out. The drama on Masters Sunday on the back nine I'll put that up against any sporting event on the planet.
Yeah, definitely excited for that. Excited for the Frozen Four as well, Gorgie. They start tonight, get things underway in Vegas. Micheletti on the national call for radio, and we'll have them on Saturday once we figure out who emerges from the fray. You got Wisconsin against North Dakota at 4, Michigan against Denver at 7:30. I was telling Brett Blakemore earlier, I got a hard time picking against Denver and David Carl. How about you? Who do you got for the Frozen Four?
Denver's fascinating to me. What a coach, what a program. Once again, a season where they didn't look, impossible to beat down the stretch. They had some hiccups certainly during the end of the regular season, but boy, when the postseason starts and those lights get bright, they seem to answer the bell. To me, that's the matchup that likely decides the national championship. I think Michigan is incredibly talented. They're fast with that skill. And then you've got Denver sitting there with the experience, and a lot of those players have been there and done it. The winner of that game, I think, likely wins the championship. I'm leaning towards Denver in that matchup. How about the coaching job on the other side of the bracket by Mike Hastings? When Wisconsin came through the Twin Cities like 6 or 7 weeks ago, I think the Gophers scored 15 goals that weekend. They crushed them both games, and Wisconsin looked completely dead in the water. And what Hastings has done, I've always known this guy is a terrific coach, getting them to play their best hockey, figuring out that goaltending situation, shutting things down in Hastings fashion defensively. They're going to get tested, no doubt, by a North Dakota team that's rolling right now. They were pretty dominant in both those wins to start the tournament. Super interesting matchups because, I lean North Dakota and Denver, but nothing would surprise me if the 2 Big Ten teams end up in that title game. It's such a good conference, and they're both such good hockey teams. Can't wait to watch. It's a huge day of sports watching with the Masters and the Frozen Four leading into Wild and Stars. It doesn't get much better. Good day to have a day off, right? Where you can just sit on that Barca Lounger you were talking about. No doubt. How about that Minnesota Frost team, too, Gorgie? I know they're back home on Saturday. Obviously, you guys are going to be on the road with this 3-game road trip, and you guys get the second part of that going through Nashville and St. Louis, but they're going to be at Grand Casino Arena facing off against the Sirens on Saturday. What have you enjoyed about working those games when you get the opportunity? Yeah, thanks for asking. I worked 12 games this year. What I enjoy most, the coaches and players, just over the top, welcoming to, I don't want to call myself an outsider, but because the Wild is my main gig, I kind of come and go over there, and they're just so good to me, so fun to work with. Ken Klee, their head coach, is just an absolute class act. He's from Denver. We're both Broncos fans, so we always talk a little football. And then the star power on this team, you look at Taylor Heise, you look at Kelly Panic, you look at those 2 great goaltenders with Maddie Rooney and Nicole Hensley, Lee Steckline on the blue line. This is just a really, really quality team. and they punched their ticket to the postseason. You know, the last couple years when they won the championship, they had to kind of like stumble their way in and wait till the final weekend. They put that to bed this year. The games I've covered, they've shown some real signs of firepower and depth up front. And again, with Ken Klee and that experience behind the bench, knowing they've done that a couple of times, like the Wild, 2 goalies you can depend on, they're going to be a tough out.
Take me to the main event then. Wild Stars tonight, playoff preview. Tonight it's the Wild and Stars. You should hashtag Mute TV anytime you have the opportunity, but especially tonight, national broadcast. So listen to Joe O'Donnell and Tom Reed. Pregame at 7:45. Puck drops just after 8 o'clock. What excites you about tonight? What excites you about this playoff series? We've seen it before. Wild have fallen twice to the Stars in 6 games, both in 2016 and 2023. Why is the third time the charm for the Minnesota Wild in the Stanley Cup playoffs against Dallas?
I'll start with John Hines. I think there's an edge there that Minnesota certainly has. I'm a huge fan of the coaching staff on the side of the Wild, but to me, the matchup really starts in goal. And on paper, it's hard to go against Jake Ottinger. You know, a Minnesota product, probably one of the 2 or 3 best goalies in the world. Good numbers against Minnesota, but I will tell you this. Gustafsson and Wallstedt, and I think both will be a factor in this playoff run this year. I really believe that. They have the capabilities to not only be as equal, but to outplay them. And that's going to be something that Minnesota has to lean on. These 2 guys have got to be at their very best. And I think it really will come down to a couple key areas. And I touched on the Dallas power play against the Wild penalty kill. And then the way the Wild power play is set up, what Quinn Hughes has brought to the table, they have to be a difference maker. They are going to get 2 or 3 looks in a game. And to me, it's going to come down to a couple factors in all these circumstances. Wild have got to be better in the faceoff circle. That's something they've got to keep an eye on against because Dallas has crushed them on the dot. And especially in the penalty kill and power play situations, if you can get that draw, we'll talk about the power play right now and get possession. Let Quinn Hughes quarterback that thing. Get the puck in the hand of Kaprizov and Boldy because they are absolute superstars. And like we saw last year against Vegas, they can be big-time difference makers when they're on the ice together. And that's likely going to be the only time they're on the ice together. If the Wild are playing well and have a lead in any game, it's going to be those power play situations. But to me, coaching, goaltending, face-off circle, these are the details of the game. Tonight we'll get a preview. And then we'll see how the coaches play it out tonight because I think it's going to be a completely different level. As much as teams are going to put into this matchup tonight, Kev, you take that game a week from Saturday, and I think it'll be a completely different level. And that's what makes the NHL playoffs so incredibly fun.
Take me inside Gorg Manor for tonight for the 8 o'clock puck drop. What's the setup like? Is LaPanta coming over to grill you up a fancy swordfish or maybe a ribeye steak? What goes into watching a game with Kevin Gorg in a day that's filled with sports activity?
Well, there will be pacing. There will be emotional ups and downs. I'm not fun to watch the game with. My significant other, Chrissy, would tell you that much. But I'll have the laptop going with one game. I'll have the TV going with the other. I've got the college game. I've got the Wild game. And I'll be probably moving around. I'll be on my feet. I don't like to sit down when I watch the Minnesota Wild. I'm always used to being on my feet when I'm working the game. So I do like to pace the living room when the game is on. In between periods, we walk the pups and we kind of decompress and we get right back up on the feet. I'm probably 1.5 feet from the screen. Cheaters on. It's not a pretty picture, but it's how I take it in. And I really, every time the Wild play Dallas and if they win, it's always just a little more fun. I'm not over it. I'm never going to get over it. They took our team and it still bothers me.
Will you mute the TV? Be honest. Will you be listening to Joe and Tom?
I actually, if I can get it synced up, which is always the biggest thing for me, I don't enjoy some of the national, especially on the ESPN side. I don't enjoy all of it, and I love listening to the local call. And I think Joe and Tom do a great job. I mean, you guys put a ton of prep into that. I want to hear the interviews with our players. I want to hear Joe talk about some of the conversations he had with some of the assistant coaches, so I can feel like at least I'm there. So if I can sync it up, yeah, Alexa plays the Wild Radio Network, and we get that TV on, and we go, and hope the Wild can find a way to win.
Love it. Figure it out tonight. I have full faith in you. We'll even give you a shout out, maybe. And, but regardless, we know no matter what happens tonight, we'll talk to you from Smashville on Saturday on FanDuel. Thank you, Kevin. Good luck tonight. Enjoy the activities, and we'll be in touch.
Thanks, Kev. Have a great day.
That's my buddy, Kevin Gorg. You usually hear from him down at Center Ice in the post-game show. Won't be the case tonight because he is idle. The Wild and the Wild Radio Network are not. We're on the air tonight, 7:45 pregame. Puck drops at 8 o'clock from Dallas. We'll have the radio call with Joe O'Donnell and Tom Reed, and a very interested observer will be the general manager of the Minnesota Wild, Bill Guerin. He joins us next on The Fan.